Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "Fear no one, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light. And what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before humans, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before humans, I will also deny before my Father in heaven." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. When we watch the news, it's not healthy to watch the news all the time if you don't balance it off with other things. It seems in the world, it just kind of emphasizes the world we live in and the ways of the world. So much time and energy is spent in manipulating and worrying about what people will think of us or how this will look publicly and how this will all be perceived. And it can drive a person crazy because, you get caught up in that and worried about how we'll be perceived, how we are perceived. It kind of erodes our sense of morality. I know even as individuals, we want to save face. We don't want to look silly, right? I was at a friend's house recently, and they live in a condo, and the bathroom door is right beside the exit. So I said goodbye, and I walked into the bathroom. And so I had to make a quick decision. Was I going to just say, oops, I messed up? Or am I going to say, I pretend I had to go to the bathroom, Those are individual examples and kind of silly, innocuous ones. But again, we want to look good before each other. We want to be seen as capable and competent, and perception enters into it so much, and the politics of it. How will this be perceived? And certainly when we look at our national leaders, our world leaders, that's so much a part of things, and it kind of is off-putting a little bit because there's the transparency gets clouded in a major way, and there's manipulation that goes on, and it's really not healthy. So in a way, the world is more political than it is moral. The role of the church and its leadership is to present through Jesus' teachings a moral response. Regardless of all what's going out there, how do we respond as individuals? What is the right thing to do? Which isn't always the popular response in our broken world. And as we've come to know through this pandemic and through the racism that's so deeply ingrained in our society, there are vast differences in viewpoints and perspectives among the people. We all have our own opinions about the social distancing, wearing masks, how much could we reasonably and safely afford to open up our bars, our restaurants, our businesses, and when and where can we gather, and with how many people, and of course, if and when we should or shouldn't be going back to church to worship in the community. All of these things, we have to make our own decisions, and there's a lot of different perspectives out there. And, And certainly we got the peaceful protesters, and we have those that are not so peaceful, and we have those that have been hurt so badly that it very easily turns volatile. And we have actions that provoke the other side. And all of those things are going on. And we have different viewpoints about our police. Should it be completely disassembled and start from scratch, or should they be defunded? Well, what does that mean exactly? We have all different opinions on that. And people we respect and admire have a different opinion than ours. And we have to accept that. And we have to realize that we all as individuals have to learn to accept our differences. But it's hard sometimes because there are certain things that just are moral and some are amoral. And some things are hard to discern. Morality requires discernment. It's learned, it's a process. It's not something that all of a sudden we, know the answer to all the time. The right thing to do. What's right for one person may not be the right thing for the other person given their circumstances. But nevertheless, in Jesus' teachings and in our Jeremiah, there are things that are just plain right and just plain wrong. We learn what the loving response is in any given situation. We have to navigate through the realities and embrace the right thing. And that's, as I said, it's a process. It must be discerned. If it's not manifested through impulsive reactions. Moral behavior needs to be developed and matured into. It's a process. It's not just handed to us on a platter. It develops through listening to the wisdom of the gospel, the teachings of Jesus, having open-minded discussions. And when it comes to racism, it's open-minded discussions between groups, between cultures, between viewpoints, between perspectives, that we say, that's where you're coming from. And that's at a that level of discussion is at a premium in our world. To sit down with each other or to listen and to learn about each other's differences and learn that there is another way of seeing the world. And when we stop to listen, we start to see the abuses, and we like to hope that in some way, some of what's happening in the U.S. and the African American racist awareness, we hope that something is going to help us as a nation, as a culture, as a world, turn the corner a bit on this issue of racism. And certainly in our, today is the National Indigenous Peoples Day, and we know very well as Canadians the racism that occurs in our country. We know it's a world phenomenon, and we can only hope that there's a growing awareness of what is going on in terms of abuse of power. Lack of discernment makes for a world where natural instinct takes over, and with that, unfortunately, distrust, secrecy, and deception become prevalent. And in such a climate, how can we ever know when we can believe another person? And how do we know what to believe? But when we look at today's gospel, we see the good news of God being the patron who will uncover everything that is covered and reveal all secrets. That's our ultimate goal. In transparency, there is freedom. When we try to hide and cover up, we're enslaving ourselves. We're reminded and consoled by the fact that God sees what's in the heart regardless of what conclusions people draw outwardly. So it's not about what other people think, it's about being straight with God and being open and being transparent the best way we can. And our God is our foundation and gives us confidence to live in a world where people may be whispering about us behind our back, as Jeremiah laments in the first reading. He's in a tough place, He's being faithful to God, but he's being rejected. They're looking for every opportunity to kind of get rid of him. And it seems that the more he is faithful to God, his message, the tougher life seemed to get. And it's noteworthy that immediately after the passage in today's first reading, Jeremiah proceeds to curse the day he was born. He's feeling that bad. And though he's consoled by his deep awareness that he's still following the will of God, at the same time he also realized that in so doing his life is becoming increasingly unbearable. But for all his curses and woes, he kept calling Israel to be faithful even when he didn't feel too faithful himself. I can't help but think of those, in our the struggles of the indigenous, the struggles of African Americans, the struggles of those who've been victims of abuse, sexual abuse, those marginalized, but aren't believed or given a lot of credibility. It's a little bit like Jeremiah in that terrors from all sides. Nobody believes me. That's when all we have left is God himself. And certainly Jesus himself teaches that honor bestowed by God is far superior to that which human beings can give. Good deeds to win honor from God are definitely more valuable than honor from human beings. Gradually, as followers of Christ, we are learning that ultimately our lives only make sense if God is alive and at the center of our lives. And that's what enabled Jeremiah to not only endure the terror on every side, but also to get beyond resentment and bitterness and anger and all of the negative emotions that usually come with that. So we can all ask ourselves the question, what is my level of trust? Do I trust, as St. Paul expresses in the second reading, that God's mercy will always be greater than any sin, and that no one can place limits on the love of God who is always ready to forgive? So regardless of what side we are on any quarrel or controversy, it's not about picking sides. It's about negotiating our way to the unity in Christ that allows us to see each other's differences as an opportunity to grow and to accept. Because ultimately, moral maturity is very much about allowing ourselves to be transformed, to move beyond our impulsive responses. And sometimes our impulsive response is to return in kind what we receive. That's what true love demands. What true love demands, can we move beyond our natural instinctive reaction to hurt or to strike back at those who hurt us? And can we transform that negative energy that enters us from others so as to not give back bitterness for bitterness, hatred for hatred, harsh words for harsh words? Can we rise above our own sense of being wronged? Can we renounce our need to be right? Can we move beyond the need to always have what we perceive that the world owes us? These are questions that both sides of any conflict must address if any societal transformation is to happen. So, for us, it's important that in our own lives we recognize those areas in our lives where we are holding back, where we are struggling with forgiveness, where we do tend to blame or talk under our breath about others because of they're not doing it right, you know. And maybe they aren't doing it right, but we don't know where they're coming from. We don't know their background. But it's important to learn what it means to have a loving heart, to love in every direction, to allow God's love to shine through us. And as we prepare to celebrate at his table, we as individuals pray for the openness of heart to allow that transforming Spirit to guide us, to help us to be agents of conversion as we allow ourselves to be converted. Amen.